Hey everybody, it's Jeff Schmidt from Alien Imaging Sound Design. I want to take you inside the audio demo for my effects library, Ultra Effects. So we'll just take this Pro Tools session. This is available on sale at alien-imaging.com/Ultra Effects. The demo is this production right here. And I just want to take you through it because sometimes when you listen to the audio demo only, it's hard to tell what all the effects are and how things are broken up. And I know a lot of guys, they, especially with production imaging demos, they do a lot of vocal effects and stutter, stuff like that. And it's hard to tell what the effects are and what the vocal processing is. So I really don't do a lot of overly processed or stuttery type of vocal stuff, especially on something like this where I'm just trying to show off the sounds. So let's go through. I'll just play a few seconds of the demo and I'll take you through sound by sound to kind of show you what I'm doing, how I'm building it, and how I'm using all the sounds in the library. And we'll also kind of go through and just sample some of the sounds. So let's just kick off the demo.
Sound Labs at Alien Imaging Sound Design. Alien Imaging Sound Design presents Ultra FX. Your essential imaging upgrade is right here. Hundreds of off-the-planet imaging effects. Ultra FX. Starters. Bets and beats. Word parts. Textures. And drones. Ultra.
Okay, that gives you a pretty good idea of kind of, and there's really only a few more seconds left and you can download the whole thing anyway. Let's just go through and kind of look at some of the effects. So I just want to give you this, just kind of like show you how the session's laid out first. First of all, up here on top, these are all the vocal tracks. Let's just take a look at these real quick. And it's all just mono tracks, and I double stuff and I pan it left and right. And there's various filters and delays and stuff like that. Stuff you guys are all pretty familiar with on how to do. There's nothing really crazy going on up here. So, and that's not really the point of the demo anyway, is the voice track. The voice is just kind of there to give it a sense of like how you could produce voice around the sounds. What's really, you're really interested in, I suspect, is the production effects themselves. So I kind of got these broken up into a couple different groups here. Ultra effects is kind of like these sounds right here. And there's, I don't know how many there are in the library. There's of this kind of sound right here, there's 145. There's another one. I broke those up into 3 different categories. There's ultra effects, there's complex, and then there's mini or micro. Looks like, how many micro effects are there? There's 49 micro effects, and micro effects are really just really short versions of those, right? Just little tiny quick things. Complex is a little bit longer, a little bit more movement going on. So I just kind of broke them up. When I'm producing, I like to know this is kind of a medium effect, this is kind of a short effect, and this is kind of a longer effect. That's just how I produce. You guys can feel free to rename stuff however you want. So I double up, like, it's so funny, like today now in the United States, at least where we've got PPM in a lot of markets, everybody's trying to shorten everything, make everything really short. So effect, like a lot of guys I hear starting the demos off or promos off with sounds that just like that. That's a promo starter, right? Well, if that's a promo starter for you, then you're going to, this library just got huge for you because as you can see, most of the sounds are that long. Even the micro effects, they're like that long, right? Right. So that's just kind of an example. So I've actually, at least on my sports station, have been doing the exact opposite. This is what I've been doing. I've been using one effect, cascading into another. I've been almost doubling and tripling the amount of effects I'm using because I find it really, like, especially when you're coming out of talk, you can really just break and set the stage. But that's a whole different conversation. Let's just get back to this. I'm going off on a tangent. Schmidt. Let's listen to some few of these. You heard this one. Let's listen to this first couple seconds here. All right, so those, and then this next group here is like what I call shells or hits and ramps. So there's a bunch of hits. There's 10 of those. There's a bunch of ramps, 10 of those. And then there's these shell effects, which are basically, I'll just show you what they look like. Once you see one, you'll see it's kind of a hit, a tail, and then a ramp. all inclusive. These are not the same as like when I have a separate hit. Well, say like this one, for example. If it's labeled as a hit, then it's all by itself, like this one. This hit is not the same as a shell. In other words, it's the same conceptually, but it's not the exact same sound. You know what I'm saying? Let's listen to this one. Right. Kind of a little texture-y, patty thing, and then it kind of ramps back up. I love that kind of stuff just and I edit them up. And so basically what I do is I brought in hits, shells, and ramps and kind of give you a bunch of different examples of that. Next up here in the green here is textures. Textures are basically just elements like that. I do a lot of layering. I don't like, I could have embedded a lot of that stuff in these shells and hits and stuff like that. But what I did was I broke it out as textures so you guys could mix and match. And that's one of the things I like to do is like I'll take a hit that's just kind of really a lot of just white noise with a lot of movement on it, right? And then you throw a texture in underneath it. And now you've got and then you can mix and match. You can just say, well, I don't like that one. Let's just do this one instead. Totally different element, right? So that's kind of how I produce when I'm producing promos. I like to have elements that I can mix and match, textures that I can lay over beds and beats. You get a lot more mileage out of a lot fewer sounds that way. That wasn't my intention in making it that way, but that's just the way I tend to produce. I think of things in layers. So I try to find things that I can layer together. And I've done it here again in this part of the demo where here's a shell here, right? It's got a lot of nice white noisy vibe on it. And then I just threw this texture underneath it to give it that body, right? And then I just completely went to a different texture here for the ramp. The ramp is muted, but let's just turn it on. And then another texture here. Oops, I turned it off. Right, just put that in and the full textures here, obviously that's been edited, but here's the full version of that. It just kind of goes on for a while, right? So that's textures in here, and then loops. I don't do a lot of loops in beds, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that loops do, especially musical loops instantly put you in a musical genre, right? So these loops are very current EDM top 40 friendly beds, and I'm hesitant to use them and throw them into the demos because it kind of locks people into thinking like, oh, this is a top 40 demo. But if you've listened to these sounds in the clear, you can use these on contemporary stations, hot AC, modern AC, alternative, until you get to the loops. And then the loops all of a sudden have to be some kind of music, or either that or they're just drum beats, right? But even then they hint at a certain kind of genre. So these I kind of went a little more pop this time, a little more current EDM vibe on these, whereas my last library, Torch, was much more cinematic, much more big beat, alternative, broken drum kind of sound. These are a little bit more dance floor kind of bass stuff, right? A little more house beaty. And I did put, there's 30 loops in there, and they all kind of have a little musical. These aren't full-fledged, 3-minute beds or 3-minute music compositions. These are basically just kind of loops to kind of give you something to work with. But if you're doing a format where these beds are completely out of format, you're still got 90% of the library is still completely available for you to use. If you think of some of these effects, I've used that on classic rock. So, I mean, just because I have it here going into this white noisy thing, just because I have it sequenced this way, I've used that on all kinds of stuff. This one different Ultra effects here. The only other production I've done on this is I've added a little delay to everything. So if we just take this, let me I'll show you the effects I have. This is kind of the delay you're hearing a lot. And I've just tacked on, let me just beat this so it stays on. See, it's just adding a little bit of tail. That's kind of like my standard operating thing anyway when I produce stuff. those little delays, not too much, really subtle, just really fleshes things out. It adds tails to things. It really kind of what I call fills in the seams, fills in the gaps, kind of acts as a glue. I know everybody likes using compression and glue, and obviously there's a lot of compression if you look at these sounds. They're not maxed out. There's a lot more dynamic than some of the sounds I've made in the past, but I love just adding little delays and stuff like that because it really does flesh out, let tails last a little bit longer, just kind of glue stuff together. And if it's used subtle enough, too much and it gets distracting, but I think I got a nice amount here. And this is kind of like, this is a standard production template. And well, since I'm talking about it, you probably want to see what it is. So let's go into it. Which one is it? Yeah. It's H delay, slightly modified preset, set to the tempo of my session, which by the way is 140. Most of these sounds were kind of based around a 140 BPM, just if that matters to you. And then I throw in the lo-fi plugin, just a little bit of saturation. The rest of that's it. Just this little bit of saturation on this plugin is so awesome. It just shaves a little high end off stuff. Just kind of gives it a nice darker quality. All right. Let's see, where were we? Let's get back to listening to. Oh, that's right. This line of effects here. That's voice. Where am I going here? I forgot where I'm going. That's what I want to see. All I did with these effects here on this top thing is I just used a filter on them just to kind of roll off some of the low end. So I used a high pass. Set the high pass. This sets to 340. I usually have these installed on all kinds of music stuff, and then I automate the cutoff. I didn't do that in this particular instance because I just wanted to set, and that's so I can kind of like, especially down here where I got beds going, I can lay these effects in and not have them take over the production. I'll just let you listen from here. So these are filtered up here.
Starters, bets and beats, word parts.
So if I take the filter off.
Starters, bets and beats, word parts.
Not really that much different, but just enough for me to kind of shave some of that low off so they don't really conflict with the bed so much. And they're really just there as kind of like quotation marks, accentuators, just little elements to offset the vocal messages and just kind of keep some of the effects of the library going rather than just have just straight bed in there. Just, it's just a production technique. So obviously I'm piling up production effects a lot more than you would be. In fact, I just noticed... Wow, it's kind of stupid. I just noticed that repeated effect, an effect here. I didn't even notice that on the demo. Interesting. All right, we learned something new today. So did I.
Ultra FX. Download now in full broadcast WAV file format at alien-imaging.com.
So again, layering, mixing and matching, not pretty much. I mean, you can just totally just take stuff and drag it right out of the library. I could have taken a shell, let's just say shell number 7, just popped it in here and just said, well, let's just cut this up and, just slide this in and boom, just done that instead. Right? So really, I mean, it's lots of opportunities for choice and for customizing and mixing with all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I don't think there's anything. Oh, the only other thing was just this last, in the end here, I did this. The only vocal effect I did, which is not part of the library, was this.
Ultra FX.
Which is this, vocal reverse, which I'm sure you guys have done a million times before. And know exactly how to do. Typically what I'll do is I'll just, I'll show you my technique for this. Your technique may vary. This is how I've always done it. Just take my vocal effect, reverse it. Where's my reverse? Right? So now my end is my beginning. My beginning is my end. Just take those two. Right, here's the vocal. I'm just going to add a little bit of more volume on that. And I'm just going to reverb this out. And I do this I don't do this real time. I print all of my effects on stuff like this. I'm going to use Echo Boy. Let's do MIDI. Boom. That gives me my little tail, right? And then I'll just reverse this. And then when I pop it in the front of my vocal effect here, I just slide it in so I get
Ultra FX.
And that's how I knock that out. And on the layer, the texture on the back end here, these are actually 2 layers of textures, and I'll just pop them out and play them. See, I've got one. I did a little mixing on this. I mixed this one way down, but here's this one in this solo. Right, got that idea. And then this one. Right, and then when mixed together, bomb, basic. But again, just kind of mixing and matching, so it's just creating different layers. And sometimes people are like, oh, you know, that bed at the end, you know, that texture at the end, it's not in the library. It's like, well, it is. You just got, you know, maybe now you know how this exact texture was made by layering 2 textures. But I would encourage, you know, adding a texture over a beat, right? And maybe even busting out your pitch shifting software to kind of like adjust the pitch of these so they can match up. Just, you know, it's about being creative and using the library to the best of the ability, and not really necessarily always looking for the drag and drop solution. But most of the effects in here and most of the tools in here are totally drag and drop. All right, that's Ultra Effects from Alien Imaging Sound Design. Check it out at alien-imaging.com. And I thank you for listening and watching. Ciao, babe.